Welcome to the deep dive, where we cut through all the clutter and really zero in on what matters most.
Mhm.
Today we're diving deep, as the name suggests, into the Kenneth Fire in West Hills, California.
Yeah,
And this is a story that is quite literally unfolding as we're talking.
right.
We've got this stack of news articles, official reports from Fire, LAPD, and it's a lot to unpack.
Is
But we're going to try to paint a clear picture for everyone about the evacuation orders, the warnings, and just the overall impact this fire is having on the community.
Yeah, and it really is heartbreaking to see what's happening in West Hills right now.
Yeah.
Stuff you sent over, it really captures how urgent everything is. With those Santa Ana wines just whipping up the fire, making it spread so fast.
Right. And it's hard to even grasp how quickly it went from, manageable to totally out of control.
Totally.
I mean, that Fox 11 article I was looking at, it said it started as a brush fire, 20 acres.
Right. Which, honestly doesn't sound that huge.
And then suddenly, boom, in a few hours, it just explodes to almost 1,000 acres. I mean,
It's insane.
it even crossed county lines into Ventura County.
Yeah, it really shows you the power of those winds.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, firefighters were already dealing with a bunch of other fires all across LA County that day.
Oh, wow.
It makes you think about how they decide where to send everybody when there's so many fires going on at once.
Yeah, how do they even begin to decide
Yeah.
who gets the resources?
Yeah.
It's definitely a tough question. And speaking of resources, that Fox 11 article also mentioned that they had to actually pull some firefighters from another fire, the Palisades fire,
Oh, wow.
to try and get this Kenneth Fire under control.
So they're having to make these tough choices about where to send people.
Exactly. And that's when you realize how serious it is, when they're like, okay, we need to shift things around here
Right.
because this is becoming a really major problem.
Totally. And that, that really brings up a point about how much we need to invest in our firefighting resources.
Yeah.
Especially with climate change, making these wildfires more frequent and bigger.
It's a scary thought. And then on top of everything else, you throw in the fact that LAPD is investigating this fire as arson.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that's a whole other level of unsettling.
It is.
To think that someone might have deliberately started this, while everyone's already dealing with the danger of the fire itself.
It's really disturbing.
Yeah, and what struck me as really unusual is that the LAPD actually came out and said they were looking into arson
Right.
while the fire was still burning.
Yeah.
Usually they don't announce that kind of thing until later.
Yeah. I've never heard of them doing that before.
Exactly. It makes you think they must have some pretty strong evidence.
Yeah, they must.
But, for now, the details are still pretty scarce.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
Honestly, right now, the most important thing is that the community is safe.
Absolutely.
I was reading through these reports, and it's clear that a lot of people had to leave their homes practically in the middle of the night with almost no warning.
Yeah, and those evacuation orders and warnings, they were changing so fast throughout the day, I can't even imagine.
It must have been chaos.
Total chaos.
Mhm.
Being told to leave your home, not knowing if you'll have a home to go back to, it's just,
Or when you can even go back.
yeah, it's just awful.
It's heartbreaking to think about what these families are going through.
Yeah.
The sources list all these specific evacuation zones with all these codes.
Right.
But, those codes don't really capture the human side of this.
Yeah, they don't.
We're talking about real people
Real families.
who have had to flee their homes.
Absolutely. And that's why having accurate, up-to-date information is so important.
Totally.
That Fox 11 article talked about an interactive evacuation map that the LA City website put up,
That's great.
which is a great resource. It lets people see what's happening
Right.
and know what they need to do.
Yeah, because even when some of those mandatory evacuations got downgraded to warnings,
Right.
there was still this feeling of
Uncertain.
yeah, is it really safe?
Yeah. Is this really over?
Especially with a wildfire like this, it could change so fast.
Exactly. And the wind can shift in an instant, and suddenly you've got a whole new situation.
Right.
You're right. A warning doesn't mean you can just relax.
Right.
Things can change so quickly.
Exactly. And it makes you think about the impact this has on people, mentally and emotionally.
Absolutely.
Having to leave your home,
Yeah.
not knowing if it'll even be there when you get back.
Right.
I mean, that's a level of stress and uncertainty that I can't even imagine.
It's a trauma.
Yeah.
And it can really have lasting effects,
And it's not just the residents who are going through this.
No, you're right.
I mean, think about the firefighters out there on the front lines battling this blaze.
They're the real heroes.
I mean, strong winds,
Mm-hmm.
difficult terrain,
Yeah.
resources already stretched thin.
It's incredible what they do.
It really is a testament to their courage and dedication.
Absolutely.
The reports mentioned both ground crews and aerial resources being used.
Wow.
I mean, that takes a lot of coordination and expertise.
It's amazing how they all work together.
Yeah, especially in such a high-pressure situation like this.
For sure.
But even with all their efforts, the reports are saying that those Santa Ana winds,
Yeah.
they're making it really hard to contain the fire.
It's like trying to predict the unpredictable.
Right.
The winds can shift so suddenly, and the fire can just change direction in an instant.
And that makes it so much harder for the firefighters to,
We know where to go.
yeah, and to allocate resources effectively. It really highlights how powerful nature is.
And how important it is to respect that power.
One thing that's really struck me in these reports is this sense of community
Yeah.
that's come out of this crisis.
It's amazing.
Neighbors helping neighbors, volunteers offering support.
It's inspiring.
It's a reminder that even in the midst of tragedy, there's still hope.
And compassion.
Yeah, it's really heartwarming to see.
Absolutely. Those small acts of kindness, they can make a world of difference.
They really can.
Providing comfort and support.
Yeah, and that feeling that you're not alone in this.
It shows the resilience of the human spirit.
Yeah, and speaking of support,
Yeah.
there are resources available for those who've been affected by the fire.
Right.
Evacuation centers have been set up. There are information hotlines, and I'm sure there'll be financial assistance as well.
It's so important for people to know where to turn for help.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we'll make sure to include links to those resources in the show notes.
Perfect.
And, we've talked a lot about the emotional toll of this situation.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to remind everyone that it's okay to ask for help
Absolutely.
if you're feeling overwhelmed or anxious.
It's a sign of strength, not weakness.
Exactly. There are mental health resources available, and seeking support is so important.
We need to talk more openly about mental health.
Yeah.
Especially after events like this.
Taking care of our emotional well-being is just as crucial as taking care of our physical needs.
Couldn't agree more.
Now, going back to that arson investigation.
Right.
If this person is found guilty of starting this fire,
Yeah.
what are the legal ramifications here?
Well, arson is a very serious offense.
Yeah.
Especially when it causes this much damage and puts people's lives at risk.
Yay.
We could be talking about felony charges,
Oh.
significant prison time,
Yeah.
substantial fines. I mean, it all depends on the specifics of the case.
Right.
How much damage was caused, whether anyone was hurt or even killed,
Right.
and the intent behind the act.
It's a sobering thought.
It is.
And it really underscores the gravity of this situation.
Absolutely. This isn't just about a few burned acres.
Right.
This is about people's safety.
Yeah.
The well-being of an entire community.
Right.
The potential for long-term consequences.
Yeah.
The ecological damage. The cost of rebuilding the trauma that families are facing.
It's a lot.
It's a lot to process.
Yeah. And these are wounds that take time to heal.
A long time.
It really makes you think, as we see more and more of these wildfires,
Yeah.
what can communities do to be more prepared?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think it requires a multifaceted approach.
Like what kind of things?
Well, we need to think about building homes with fire-resistant materials,
Okay.
creating defensible space around properties,
Right.
having clear evacuation plans in place.
So it's almost like we need to shift from a reactive mindset
Yeah,
to a proactive one
exactly.
when it comes to wildfires.
We need to adapt to this new reality
Right.
where wildfires are more frequent and more intense.
And community preparedness is key.
Absolutely. We need better early warning systems, clear
Yeah.
communication channels,
Right.
and training programs that teach people what to do.
So they can respond effectively.
Exactly.
And what about the resources for those who have already been impacted by the fire?
Right. So we've talked about the evacuation centers and the hotlines,
Yeah.
which are crucial for immediate support.
Right.
But we also need to think long term.
Okay.
There will be financial assistance to help people rebuild.
Yeah.
And mental health resources are essential as well.
Absolutely.
People need help processing the trauma of this experience.
It's amazing to see how communities rally together during these times.
It is.
Reading these reports, there are stories of neighbors helping neighbors,
Yeah.
volunteers providing support,
It's heartwarming.
this incredible sense of resilience.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times,
Yeah.
there's still hope and compassion.
And even if you weren't directly affected by this fire,
Right.
there are still ways to help.
Absolutely.
You can donate to organizations that are providing relief efforts,
Yeah.
volunteer your time, or even just listen to those who are struggling.
Every little bit helps.
Yeah, it really shows the power of community.
Yeah, it does.
So for everyone listening out there, here's the takeaway. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and have a plan. Check your local news, keep an eye on official channels like Wildfire, and get familiar with those interactive evacuation maps.
Those are so helpful.
Seriously, knowing what's going on can make all the difference.
We really can.
And remember, we're all in this together.
We are.
As we face these increasingly frequent and intense wildfires.
Yeah.
It's so important that we support each other.
Absolutely.
Learn from these events and work together to create a safer and more resilient future.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From the fire's rapid spread and the arson investigation, to the impact on the community and the importance of being prepared.
It's a lot to take in.
It really is. It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
That's for sure.
But one thing's for certain, we need to stay engaged, stay informed, and stay connected.
Absolutely. And don't forget to check out deep dive discussions on YouTube
Yeah.
for more in-depth analysis on the stories that matter most.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Kenneth Fire.
It was a pleasure being here.
Stay safe, everyone. Stay informed and take care of yourselves and each other.